Hey, this is Emily Carr's Klee Wyck, Chapter 3, Skedans. Jimmy, the Indian, knew the jagged reefs of Skedans Bay by heart. He knew where the bobbing kelp knobs grew and that their long hose-like tubes were waiting to strangle his propeller. Today, the face of the bay was buttered over with calm, and there was a wide blue sky overhead. Everything looked safe, but Jimmy knew how treacherous the bottom of Skedans Bay was. That's why he lay across the bow of his boat, anxiously peering into the water and motioning to Louise, his wife, who was at the wheel. The engine stopped far out. There was the plop and gurgle of the anchor striking and settling, and then the sigh of the little canoe being pushed over the edge of the boat, the slap as she struck the water. Jimmy got the sheepdog and me over to the beach first so that I could get to work right away. Then he went back for Louisa and the missionary's daughter. Skedans was more open than Tanu. The trees stood farther back from it. Behind the bay, another point bit deeply into the land, so that light came in across the water from behind the village, too. There was no soil to be seen. Above the beach it was all luxuriant growth. The earth was so full of vitality that every seed which blew across her surface germinated and burst. The growing things jumbled themselves together into a dense thicket. So tensely earnest were these things about growing in Skedans that everything linked with everything else, hurrying to grow to the limit of its own capacity. Weeds and weaklings alike throve in the rich moistness. Memories came out of this place to meet the Indians. You saw remembering in their brightening eyes and heard it in the quick hushed words they said to each other in Haida. Skedans beach was wide. Sea drift was scattered over it. Behind the logs the ground sloped up a little to the old village site. It was smothered now under a green tangle. Just one gray roof still squatted there among the bushes, and a battered row of totem poles circled the bay. Many of them were mortuary poles, high with square fronts on top. The fronts were carved with totem designs of birds and beasts. The tops of the poles behind these carved fronts were hollowed out, and the coffins stood, each in its hole on its end, the square front hiding it. Some of the old mortuary poles were broken, and you saw skulls peeping out through the cracks. To the right of Skedans were twin cones of earth and rock. They were covered to the top with trees and scrub. The land ran out beyond these mounds and met the jagged reefs of the bay. We broke through the growth above our heads to reach the house. It was of the old type, but had been repaired a little by halibut fishers who still used it occasionally. The walls were full of cracks and knotholes. There were stones, blackened by fire, lying on the earth floor. Above them was a great smoke hole in the roof. It had a flap that could be adjusted to the wind. Sleeping benches ran along the wall, and there was a rude table made of driftwood by the halibut fishers. Indians used the floor for their tables and seats. When the fire roared, our blankets were spread on the platforms, and Louisa's stew pot simmered. The place was grand. We had got close down to real things. In Skedans, there were no shams. When night came, we cuddled into our blankets. The night was still, just the waves splashed slow and even along the beach. If your face was towards the wall, the sea tang seeped in at the cracks and poured over it. If you turned round and faced in, there was the lovely smoky smell of our wood fire on the clay floor. Early in the morning, Jimmy stirred the embers. Then he went out and brought us icy water from the spring to wash our faces in. He cut a little path like a green tunnel from the house to the beach so that we could come and go easily. I went out to sketch the poles. They were in a long, straggling row the entire length of the bay and pointed this way and that. But no matter how drunken their tilt, the Hydapoles never lost their dignity. They looked sadder, perhaps, when they bowed forward, and more stern when they tipped back. They were bleached to a pinkish silver color and cracked by the sun, but nothing could make them mean or poor, because the Indians had put strong thought into them and had believed sincerely in what they were trying to express. The twisted trees and high-tossed driftwood hinted that Skedans could be as thoroughly fierce as she was calm. She was downright about everything.